Listen, she's been in here 1 week. You told me originally that even if it was a kidney stone, she'd be out of here in a couple of days.
You know what I said, Sergeant? I was wrong.
You were wrong.
Sergeant, I'm not God.
Yeah, that's pretty obvious, isn't it?
Frank Sinatra playing a hard-boiled detective in the murder mystery The First Deadly Sin, one of 4 new films we'll be reviewing on Sneak Previews, 2 critics talking about and sometimes arguing about the latest movies in town. Across the aisle from me, Roger Ebert, film critic of the Chicago Sun-Times.
And across the aisle from me is Gene Siskel, film critic of the Chicago Tribune. Well, in addition to The First Deadly Sin, which I know I was surprised by, we'll also be reviewing Paul Simon's somewhat autobiographical new film One Trick Pony, and Peter O'Toole as a dictatorial movie director in The Stuntman. But first, Gene starts with a new horror film called The Awakening.
Well, to put it quite directly, The Awakening is a miserable ripoff of a very successful horror film from a few years ago called The Omen. This time, it's not the devil's son doing the damage, it's the reincarnation of an evil Egyptian queen. Now, Charlton Heston, who's made a lot of bad films recently, stars in The Awakening as a British archaeologist who finds a long-lost mummy queen. When he and his daughter go inside the queen's ancient burial tomb, strange things begin to happen. First, their guide disappears, and then Heston's daughter stumbles across the guide's lantern.
Father!
Yes, sir.
He must have found a soda.
A what?
It's a sort of secret inner shrine that's quite often one. We looked here too, but we never found it.
There's a mark in the dust. Father.
Yes. I suppose possibly the 7 stars. The ritual talks of 7 stars. God.
What a ham-bone picture. That's incredibly phony stuff. First of all, the walls look like they've just been freshly frescoed. And isn't it amazing how the guide and Heston found that secret button after it has eluded generations of searchers for 4,000 years? Right away they find it. Later in the film, Heston tells his assistant and his new wife, played by Susanna York, to destroy the mummy's possessions that he's been keeping in their house. Heston feels a spell coming on.
Do something for me, quickly, before I change my mind. I'm frightened. There's a spare key to my safe, taped under the middle drawer in the bedroom. Take it and smash the canopic jars. Do it.
Now, the payoff at the end of this ridiculous film is when Heston's daughter, who supposedly is the queen reincarnated, turns on him. But as soon as she does, the movie ends in a flash, presumably to set up some kind of sequel. But if all of us across this great land of ours pull together, we can wipe out any chance of there being a sequel to The Awakening. All we have to do is not go to the original.
Gene, I wish I voted for you. I really agree with your platform. This movie is ridiculous. You're right. The Omen at least had some sort of small, slight patina of scientific background to kind of give it an excuse for existing. This movie, The Awakening, now I never took archaeology in college, but even on the basis of having leafed through a couple of back issues of National Geographic, I know that when you find a 4,000-year-old tomb that hasn't been disturbed for 4,000 years, what you don't do is try to open it up with a sledgehammer and get in a crew of laborers with pickaxes to dig at it, and that's what this movie does. It's just, it's totally laughable.
Seriously, I mean, other than being a joke of a film, I question what Heston is doing in a picture like this. Here's a guy who's has been at least a leading actor. I don't know why he makes junk like this. He now has 2 awful films this year. He had one of those westerns, what was that called?
Mountain Men.
The Mountain Men, that stunk. And now this film. And both films really look like they're come from the 50s. Real old-fashioned, dumb movie making. So he ought to wise up a little bit.
I'll tell you, you know, they're having these festivals of the worst movies of all time. I think Heston has just found himself a niche in that revival circuit permanently.
I think so.
Right.
Let's get to something better.
Okay. Singer and songwriter Paul Simon plays a character who's maybe a little bit like himself or like some of his friends in a touching and low-key new movie called One Trick Pony. Now, Simon was, of course, half of the team of Simon and Garfunkel, one of the most popular musical groups of the late 60s. And in One Trick Pony, Simon plays a folk singer whose biggest hit was 12 years ago, an anti-war song that made his name a household word. Well, the star has been fading ever since. But all the same, he keeps his band together, he keeps on writing new songs, and he still spends half of his life performing on the road, working smaller and smaller clubs for less and less money.
He's a one-trick pony. One trick is all that horse can do. He does one trick only. It's the principal source of his revenue. And when he steps into the spotlight, you can feel the heat of his heart come rising through. See how he dances, see how he loops from side to side. See how he prances, the way his hooves just seem to glide. He's just a one-trick pony, that's all he is, but he turns that trick with pride. He makes it look so easy, it looks so clean. He moves like God's immaculate machine. He makes me think about all of these extra moves I make, and all this herky-jerky motion, and the bag of tricks it takes to get me through my working day. One-trick pony.
That song expresses the way Paul Simon's character feels in this movie. People persist in thinking he only knows one trick. They categorize him as an anti-war hero of the 60s. They don't want to listen to his new music. Meanwhile, back home in New York, his marriage is falling apart. His wife, who's divorcing him, wants him to quit touring and spend more time with his son. So he takes his little boy and they head out to Central Park together.
It's a great day for baseball here at Yankee Stadium. The New York Yankees take on Boston Red Sox. On the mound for the Red Sox, their ace and fantastic starter, Dennis Eckersley. I'm Frank Messer, and I'm Phil Rizzuto. We'll be broadcasting the game today. We should be ready to begin right now. Eckersley has finished his warm-ups. First batter for the Yankees will be
Reggie Jackson.
Reggie Jackson, just entering second grade at the Little Red Schoolhouse down in Greenwich Village. Okay, Reggie digs in. Look at the concentration on him. Incredible. Here comes the pitch. Swung on and missed, strike one, and Eckersley is looking very sharp today. He's throwing smoke up there, throwing smoke. Ridge knocking some dirt off his spikes. Eckersley looks in, he takes a sign round, comes the left arm in, comes the pitch, and it's swung on and missed. Good swing, good swing. It was a very good swing. It was a miss, but it was a good swing. Looked like he's going for the bleachers, didn't it, Phil? It certainly did, Frank. He's almost up to fractions now, the Ridge. Yep. That second grade class is moving at a fantastic pace. It's just amazing that a guy can learn fractions, completely finish his reading assignment, and still be in there on the last day of the pennant race. Well, it's just the kind of kid he is.
Scene kind of reminded me there of Kramer versus Kramer. One Trick Pony is an intelligent and a surprisingly effective movie. It's the story of one singer's painful attempts to succeed in a music business that's long ago left him behind. When he plays his old material, he's old-fashioned. When he plays his new material, he has to run interference past a gang of high-powered hotshots who are experts in marketing, packaging, programming, retailing. Everything except music. It's kind of nice the way his personal crossroads and the bitter social criticism in this movie both come together into one story.
I liked it an awful lot, too. It's a little bit stacked in favor of Paul Simon. He wrote the picture, and so all the other music other than the stuff he plays is pretty bad. And in the relationship with his wife, he comes off as sort of the good guy. But nevertheless, I think the film is exceedingly well directed, and it is very touching, the relationship between him and his wife, who are splitting apart, and the little boy. As filmmakers get to be in their 30s or early 40s, they're making films about families, and it's refreshing to see that. I think we immediately respond to that kind of story.
No longer just have the kid on the road. Now it's the kid on the road, except he's a 38-year-old kid with a family back in New York. There's a lot of music in this film, and I liked all the music, and one thing I liked is that they follow in this film the story of one song that he's written, and he gets this manager who says, we can put you back in the top 40, kid. We're going to put you on AM radio where it's at. And, but they're going to have to give it a new arrangement. They're going to have saxophones and strings and take his original concept and totally change it to make it sound like every other song on the radio. That's interesting.
We learn how the music business can be manipulated a little bit, how songs are made. That's because the film is so well directed by a guy named Robert F. Young, who did a film called Short Eyes, a prison drama, a couple years ago. A fine director, apparently.
Good movie.
The Stuntman is now our next picture, and I think it's one of the most original films I've seen in a long time. I really enjoyed it. On the surface, it's a thriller about a Vietnam veteran wanted by the police, wanted for murder, who stumbles into a movie being made on location in California. Now, he sees the picture as a safe hiding ground for himself. Steve Railsback plays the veteran, and he's regularly surprised by the tricks of the filmmaking crew. For example, he becomes alarmed when he sees an old woman drowning.
Hey, give me a hand. Give me a hand. Here. Jules. It's okay. I got you. Don't be afraid. It's all right. Oh, it's all right. Come on. It's okay. It's gonna be all right. Wait a second. Oh, hey, I know you, don't I? I've seen you on TV. You're You gotta be crazy to cover a face like yours.
We only covered at the end of the film.
Come on.
No, rescue me.
Four.
Come on, please. I've always wanted someone to rescue me from something.
It's just like in a movie.
I am the movie.
A nice scene. That was Barbara Hershey as the actress. A lot of this film is about the way movies and movie people exploit other people. The biggest user of all, of course, is the film's director, well played by Peter O'Toole here. When he discovers that Steve Railsback is wanted by the police for murder, O'Toole knows he has this young man's number, and he can use him any way he wants. So he hires him as a stuntman on the picture.
Step right up, folks. Ride the ride of the century on Eli's killer crane. Get in, I have a present for you.
Thanks, I'll walk.
Ah, youth, hot youth. In town for 6 hours only, captures the leading lady, can't be bad, shouldn't be too depressed.
Is it okay to be depressed about you showing the cops the film?
You don't really trust me, do you? Come here to me. You constantly amaze me. You don't go to movies. What are you, a communist? What were those handcuffs? Some sort of decoy disguise? Did you not know that King Kong the First was just 3 foot 6 inches tall? He only came up to Fay Ray's belly button. If God could do the tricks that we can do, he'd be a happy man.
Now!
Later, in the middle of a World War I stunt for O'Toole's film, Railsback begins to fear that the entire crew is plotting against him, trying to kill him.
Oh, Jesus! No!
I don't want to give away too much of this most unusual film. Let's just say that it has more surprises than any film I've seen in a long, long time, as well as some witty commentary on not just movie makers, about how all of us use people. Yes, the stuntman is a little bit cynical, but it also is a film that obviously loves and understands the passion of those people who make movies, people who are totally engaging, like Peter O'Toole, even when they lie right to your face. I like this film about as much as anything I've seen this year.
You know, Gene, my feelings about this film are very complicated, and they begin with that notion when you said it has a lot of surprises in it. In a way, there were so many surprises, they stopped being a surprise for me. In other words, it turns out the old woman isn't an old woman. It turns out that he's really involved in what looks like violence instead of a stunt. There are cases of mistaken identity and so forth that goes on and on and on until you realize that every scene is going to end with things being different than you thought they were.
Almost every scene.
Well, almost every scene. Another thing that bothered me, though, you really like this film,
yes,
and I didn't like it that much, and yet I don't have real strong feelings against it. Instead, I felt as if in some way I just wasn't engaged by it. It's like the film was going on. They were having the party without me. I was sitting there, I was watching the screen. It seemed like it was repetitive, that it was needlessly confusing instead of just being labyrinthine, which I think you liked about it.
Well, sometimes when there are films or mysteries or tricky films, sometimes you just notice more the tricks being played than the characters. I got involved with the characters. I got involved with the relationship between Barbara Hershey and this guy. I thought that was a very interesting relationship. I couldn't figure out at any time where any people stood in relation to each other, what they really felt. And that's such a rare experience for me going to the movies. I'm sure it is for you too. We can figure movies out in the first 10 minutes when we sit down. We know everything, no surprises. I love the surprises. I thought the film was as intricately directed by Richard Rush as any film I've seen this year. I thought it was very exciting. So maybe you should see it again.
Well, okay, I will. I'm going to give it a no vote, but I'm going to consider it to be sort of unfinished business because it just left me cold so far. So you like it so much, I've got to respect you enough to give it another chance just as a moviegoer myself.
All right.
Okay, fine. Here's a movie that, frankly, was a pleasant surprise for me. It's called The First Deadly Sin, and it's based on a bestseller about a tired and quiet New York police detective who wants to close one last case before he retires from the force. Frank Sinatra plays the detective, and to be honest, that's one of the reasons I didn't expect much from this movie. Sinatra hasn't made a feature film in 10 years, and most of his work in the late 60s was as a detective in prepackaged junk like Tony Rome and Lady in Cement, terrible movies. But he's very effective in The First Deadly Sin. He brings a kind of tired nobility to his role as an overworked cop.
Excuse me, Sergeant. Yeah, I checked the gutters from here to the core, and I didn't find anything.
Okay, check the garbage bag. See what you come up with. Hey. When did you get out of the academy?
2 months ago.
Check both sides of the street.
Thanks.
You got a nice way with words. All right, let's roll him over. Easy. Hold it. Wait a minute. Where's Delaney? Delaney!
Yo.
Come here.
What do you got?
There's a wallet here underneath. Wallet.
Suppose it fell out of his pocket?
I don't know. It was just lying on the sidewalk. Easy.
Jeez. Pipe or a club?
No. You know, these facial lacerations are from his death fall. No, there's no depression or any crushing, but there was a definite puncture, the hole, back of the skull.
hammer.
Yeah, it's possible. Depends on how deep the penetration is. I'll know better when I get him downtown.
Anything else you can tell me?
No, not that I can see. But you know, he's a husky guy. It's amazing he didn't put up a fight.
Maybe the poor never had a chance. Shoulder ice.
Yeah, boss.
Get this dusted, will you?
Yes.
Could you get me up?
Come on, Doc. I'll get you up.
Suppose you could get me a preliminary report by morning?
Oh, no, I could never refuse a pretty face.
Doc, you got great taste and very good eyesight.
Sarge,
yeah.
There's an emergency call for you.
That was James Whitmore as the coroner. Working together, they begin to suspect that a single psychopathic killer has been responsible for a whole series of stabbing murders all over New York City. Now, there's no official pressure to push the investigation. On the contrary, Sinatra's bosses would be happy to see him retire and go away, but there's something inside Sinatra that just won't let him stop. Now, in the middle of all this, his wife, played by Faye Dunaway, falls desperately ill with kidney disease.
Hey, kiddo. You look great.
You don't look so hot yourself, wise guy.
Well, you know how it is with us New York cops. Out partying all night long.
Anything good?
Yeah, a couple of centerfolds, not much. How you feeling?
Lousy. Food's okay.
Some food.
What'd they get me for?
Kidney. You know, the guy was telling me the other day that a person can live just as easily with one kidney as two kidneys. Told me that just the other day.
You proposing to me, Sergeant?
Suppose I am proposing. What do you plan to do about it?
Girl's gotta be crazy to marry a cop.
And you wouldn't know anything about that now, would you?
Sinatra's so worried about his wife that he takes out his frustrations on the doctor.
Listen, she's sensible, she's not sensible, she rambles, she's in, she's out. I don't know what the hell's going on. Now, explain it to me.
That doesn't worry me. You see, with this series...
It doesn't worry you, you son of a... That lady in there is my wife. She's my whole world. Do you understand that?
Hold of yourself.
She trusts you. She hired you. You keep giving her all that bullshit about antibiotics and steroids, and I think it's killing you instead of curing it. And why her?
Calm down.
Why her?
Hey, take it easy. Take it easy. Come on. In a public place here. Come on. Now, look, I can't answer why, okay? Sometimes the practice of medicine is unfair. The drugs we use on one patient don't. Look, I don't want to lose her any more than you do, Sergeant. I'm doing what I can.
Well, that's a good scene, but I'm afraid those hospital scenes with Faye Dunaway are the worst parts of this movie. They go on and on. They're utterly predictable, but don't blame her, blame the movie, which constantly cuts back to the longest-running deathbed scene I can remember. Apart from that, though, I admired The First Deadly Sin. I admired the quiet, poignant, understated performance by Frank Sinatra. It's kind of nice that after all these years, he still has the ability to surprise us.
And that's what I liked about the film, too, Sinatra's performance. I think he uses traditional acting methods to give a good performance, the element of surprise, unpredictability, exploding in one moment, and then quiet in another, quiet, alone on the streets, pursuing this killer. I think he's been a good actor earlier on in his film career. It's nice that he's back now with a strong performance.
If they had taken that performance and just followed it from the beginning to the end of the film and surrounded it by the good character roles that are in this film and good character actors, I think, however, it would have been a better film because it really is sabotaged. And I want to get back to this, to those Faye Dunaway deathbed scenes. I mean, every time we go back to her, she talks a little more softly, she looks a little more pale, it's a little more predictable, and it's a little more deadly in terms of the tempo and movement of the film. But other than that, though, it's a good film.
It's good because of Sinatra. You know, 10 years ago, he made Dirty Dingus McGee and then announced his retirement from show business. It looked like that was going to be his last film, and that would have been a tragedy. Now, this film is more like the kind of stuff that he is capable of making, has made earlier on in his career, a good film from Frank Sinatra.
Well, that may be the last good movie on this show, Gene, because here's Spot the Wonder Dog. leaping into the balcony to chew up the dogs of the week's worst movies.
Well, my dog this week is the movie The Day After Halloween, and as best I could tell, this film had absolutely nothing to do with Halloween or November 1st. It's an Australian film about a poor working girl who gets involved with some high flyers in the modeling business. She ends up being chased by, get this, an old boyfriend who drives a Mr. Whippy ice cream truck, a middle-aged lesbian model, and a kinky old movie producer who likes to take dirty pictures. The Day After Halloween has some nice special effects, but at its core, it's really nothing more than yet another lurid little thriller about a young girl cowering in terror. Avoid this one.
Well, a couple of weeks ago, we devoted an entire program to the disturbing new trend of movies that make sport out of violence toward women. That sick trend continues this week with a new exploitation film named Cheerleaders' Wild Weekend. The movie's about the hijacking of a school bus filled with 3 squads of cheerleaders, and they're held captive by a gang of half-witted kidnappers. The movie alternates between lame-brained striptease contests and scenes of brutality and rape. This movie is vile. It's totally sick in its attitude toward women, and especially in the moronic premise that being kidnapped makes for a wild weekend.
Good point. So much for the dogs. Now to recap our reactions to the main 4 movies on this show. Roger and I both hated The Awakening, the dumb Charlton Heston mummy movie. It's positively one of the year's worst. The no next door name means we cannot recommend you see The Awakening. Roger and I both liked One Trick Pony, the Paul Simon musical drama. It had some lively comments on marriage and the music business. 2 yeses for One Trick Pony. A split vote, however, on The Stuntman. I think it's one of the year's most intriguing films. Roger thought it was tedious and confusing. I say yes. Roger vote no, but he says he'll see it again. And finally, we agree on The First Deadly Sin. The first new feature film from Frank Sinatra in 10 years. He's wonderful in this thriller, but Faye Dunaway is totally wasted. Nevertheless, we both recommend you see The First Deadly Sin. So what do we have on this show?
I think we have some surprises. First of all, the surprise that Frank Sinatra is so good in The First Deadly Sin. And then, secondly, I was surprised by One Trick Pony. It was a lot more intelligent.
I was too, and I was also surprised and delighted with the film that I'm arguing for, The Stuntman. I think it's worth taking a look at.
Were you surprised by The Awakening?
No, Heston has not been making good movies, so I wasn't surprised.
Okay. That's it for this week. Next time on Sneak Previews, we're going to have a special program devoted to a new trend, changing sex roles in the movies. The behavior of men and women in love used to be fairly stereotyped in Hollywood movies, but now we're beginning to get some thoughtful new films that try to break new ground. We'll take a look at whether they succeed or not next week, and until then, we'll see you at the movies.
Funding for Sneak Previews was provided by this station and by other public television stations.